Welcome to Curiosity Not Judgment, another episode closer to enlightenment, I guess. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
Is that a true statement? I don't know. We're continuing to be enlightened as we go. We want to talk a little bit today about encountering someone who has made possibly a negative first impression, and how do we move forward from there, and how do we make an about face if things have gotten off on the wrong foot.
And I think thrown in there is influence, right? And how does a first impression in a relationship color that relationship? How can we be intentional about how we would like the relationship to go? And that kind of implies a willing partner in the relationship too. Sometimes you will run across people that just don't want to have a relationship, right? Or don't do their part in the relationship. And so we don't want to go toward the whole dysfunctional relationship part. But there's obviously things. Relationships are two-way streets. And so what can we do for our part that's helpful in relationships and moving them toward fruitful outcomes?
Yeah. I don't know why, but something in what you just said instantly brought to memory, the movie, classic movie, or the more modernized movie of, and of course, now that I'm going to try to spit out the title, it's not coming to the forefront of my mind, with the twins and the new stepmom is introduced and they try to thwart the marriage and they go camping and they, put stuff in her sleeping bag. This is a terrible way to begin this segment when I can't remember the movie title.
I know the name you're talking about. Well,
anyway, the point being, it's the evil stepmom gets introduced, and it'll come to me in like 5 minutes when it's no longer relevant. That is as old as time, right? That's an element that's in everything from Cinderella to any modern day story, where the new stepmom comes in and the children have this judgment, like, she's just out for the money, or she's just out for the whatever, and there's an instantaneous judgment that is launched against that person, and the relationship is soured from the get-go. And I think, as the story unwinds, the question is there an about face in how they view one another so that it's no longer a threat, or does the relationship continue to be poisoned to the point where it's ultimately dissolved?
And guess what? That's our choice.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's our choice. I know sometimes we think, well, that other person is just like that. I'm never going to change them, and I don't like them that way, and so why would I even try? But we've all had experiences where we meet someone and we quickly classify them, because that's what our brains do. We have way too many inputs these days, so we classify them and put them into a certain box, and then they change.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always try to think about in that situation is, did they change or did I change? Did my perception of them change?
Yeah.
Did my actions towards them change as a result, so that they become the person, their more authentic self, or their more whatever? I know when I'm in a situation that I'm uncomfortable, and we've spoken a little bit about this before, I act differently than when I'm in a comfortable situation, a welcoming situation. If someone lights up when I come in the room, I act a lot different than if someone's looking at me like I've just stepped off the Mars bus. And so what does that do? So I know if I act differently, then other people probably do. Maybe I'm making an assumption there. But if that's the case, then what is our role in the relationship?
Right. Parent trap is the answer.
Parent trap, that's right.
For all those of you that were yelling at me, like, parent trap. I got it. What is our role? That is the key question, right? I think that is the ultimate theme through this entire series of episodes that we're doing. What is our role? And if you have encountered somebody that's come into a relationship with a particular attitude or personality or characteristic that you are kind of repelled by, what is your responsibility in, I don't want to say deflecting that, because it's not just a question of getting the behavior away from you, but how do you deal with it in a manner where you can have a different mindset about the relationship, so that there's potential for growth and integration in ideas, and how do you make things better moving forward?
Well, bringing the whole title of this series into play, I can tell you that if you judge a person and have contempt before investigation, it will absolutely go one way.
Yeah.
If you can sit with a curiosity about the situation and ask some good questions and remain curious, there is a chance that the relationship could get better. It may not, but I think if you just come in with a judgment, I think the chances of it getting better are pretty low. I think that if there is some way you can hold curiosity and see if you can intentionally look for the gift or the opportunity in that relationship, there's at least a chance that it could get better. And there could be, one could argue, a probability that it would get better.
Sure.
And better to the point where it's so satisfying that you call them every Friday night and ask them what they're doing. That's asking too much of a relationship, potentially. But I think the potential for it to get better is absolutely improved.
Yeah. I can think of some practical examples of this. I remember a relative of mine was having an extremely difficult time with a co-working relationship, and it just seemed to be very combative. And regardless of what was said or done, there seemed to be the kind of just the spirit of animosity. And then one day she just had this kind of download: bring the woman a salad for lunch, which doesn't seem to make any sense in the normal course of business. You don't just show up with somebody who you've not been getting along with, say, here, I made you lunch. But there was something in that gesture, in making that salad, that somehow removed a barrier, removed a guard. And from that point forward, the relationship was so softened, and so it became vulnerable in a positive way, where there was opportunity for genuine relationship and connection. And I think of that story, this has happened probably 10 plus years ago, but I think of that story often about what is the one gesture or, statement or phrase or invitation that you can make that would help remove a barrier that has been there and maybe even been there for years. And it may be something as simple as a meal or a snack or a special treat left on somebody's desk, but in this day and age of working remotely, you may not have that opportunity. And so it's going to be dependent on words and responses. But I think ultimately everybody wants to be accepted for who they are. And if there has been this culture of hostility that's been brewing for a while, to change the way that the interaction is going takes some really strategic effort on our parts. But I think it's definitely worth being curious about and investigating, is there something that I can do to change the tone here?
What strikes me about your story, and the first thought that comes to my mind is, you say it takes some strategic effort, but how much effort really is it? I mean, is it more effort to sit for 10 minutes and think about a way you could brighten someone's day? Or is it more effort to live in a situation where you've got a bad relationship?
Good point.
To me, the answer is obvious. And boy, when you said, well, and maybe you don't physically work with them, you can't bring them a salad, you just have to say a few words on a Zoom call. How hard is it? What expense or sacrifice is it really for us to say a kind word in a meeting?
Yeah. Or
to give someone credit, even if they don't deserve it? Who cares? I think that level of, we used to call it civility, or that level of thinking of others is absent in a large degree today. And I think it's refreshing. I think a little bit goes a long way in today's world. I think that in today's isolated COVID world, where you're pouring Miracle Grow on issues that we manifest in our own selves, paying attention to someone. The salad may not have even been the point in that story. The point is that no one has ever brought that person lunch before,
right?
Or even acknowledged their existence in the office. And I think that that's the key, is that how do we acknowledge someone's existence to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that there are some very casual, even friendly, playful ways that you can start to extract some information that might be that icebreaker, or that hurdle to overcome with some of these difficult relationships. We've got a mutual friend who likes to ask silly questions at the beginning of meetings. But, if we were to really listen to what the answer was, he caught me off guard earlier, even today. So what's your favorite Easter candy? And I couldn't think fast enough, but I heard him say, oh, his favorite is Reese's eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm going to have that in my mind. So if there's a moment in which, he's having an off day or a difficult season, those Reese's eggs might come in awful handy. And so if you're in a meeting environment, if you're, with a difficult family member or something, and there's that casual conversation that comes up, hey, what's your favorite movie, favorite snack, favorite whatever, that could be a $1 handoff that could be instrumental in changing the tone of that relationship.
When you are being curious, you're going to hear those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're being judgmental or you're on your own agenda, you may not. I mean, I have to confess, I was in that meeting and I didn't hear him say that. But I saw a great meme over the Easter weekend. Guy says, so how's your diet going? She says, terrible. I had 12 eggs this morning. And he goes, scrambled? She goes, no, Reese's.
Oh, or Cadbury. Yeah,
Right,
one of the
right.
two.
And so,
Yeah.
but no, and see, you picked up on something that could be, hugely important in the future. Imagine that person's not having a great day, and all of a sudden you come in bearing a Reese's egg. I mean, come on, that would be. I would perk up for that, right? If someone A, listened when I talked, right, and B, took the extra effort to go to the store and get one, and then C, remembered to bring it to work. That's a huge deal. And think of the sacrifice that you would make in that situation to go to the store and buy a Reese's egg.
Very little.
Very little.
Yeah.
The return on investment, to use an economic term, would be infinite in that situation. And so it doesn't take much.
No.
And it doesn't, you said strategic effort earlier, and that's what I'm keying in on, and I'm not criticizing those choice of words. I'm saying that strategic effort could be 5 minutes of thinking, what would make that person's day that I could even just say, or write in a sticky note and leave on their desk, or whatever it is. It's not that big of a deal. We don't pause enough and think, what could I do in the situation to make this better? I think I often think, you know what? I'm going to wait till they make the effort to make this better. It's their fault. They're the ones that are acting badly, not me. We never think of ourselves as acting badly.
Sure.
Right? When they make that effort, then I'll respond in kind. What if we made the effort first?
So going back to that notion of, if you're with or in a relationship that is primarily digital, meaning you don't have interaction with somebody face to face, you don't get an opportunity to leave something nice on their desk. I'm trying to think about how the practical steps, because I always want to come back to practical, because we can talk about this theoretically all day long, but how do we begin to glean some information that we could then process and use with wisdom and with grace and with kindness to change that atmosphere, to change the tone of a conversation. And it's easier if you're in a management position, and you can certainly set the tone of a meeting and say, hey, before we get started, everyone go around and say your favorite movie or say your favorite whatever. It's easy to do that if you're in a management role. But if you're just a participant in a meeting that you've not had authority over, how do you begin to develop practically some of these opportunities to soften relationship when maybe it's meeting from the minute it starts to the minute it ends, and you have very little time for the humanity exchange?
I think the first step would be is to get rid of the notion that you're just a participant. I think that the paradigm there would limit your actions and your behaviors. Look, a participant in a meeting is, I would say, is more important than the person leading the meeting. And as someone who does have to lead many meetings, I would say that if I'm coming in with an agenda and I've got back-to-back meetings all day, I may not think of it, and I'm going to be really super grateful if you would say, hey, could we just take a minute and go around the room and talk about our favorite Easter candy? That's the kind of thing that is refreshing, and I would say 9.9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a negative reaction from the leader of the meeting.
Okay.
So you have that power.
Okay, so you heard it. If you get a bad reaction, you email Gary.
Whether or not you take advantage of that is a different story.
Right.
All right, but remember, one of the giant worldwide principles is prohibition versus inhibition. And I really like this. Is someone prohibiting you from doing this, or are you inhibiting yourself from doing this? I often talk about our own state like this. We don't have a prohibition problem. We have an inhibition problem. And in New Mexico, we tend to think that we can't do something. No one's ever told us we can't. We just think we can't, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's pervasive in many situations.
Yeah.
But we think we don't have the power to do something.
Yeah.
I think we do.
All right. So let's say that we're struggling with the relationship that has gotten off on the wrong foot. There's some toxicity there, and maybe it's been going on for some time. It might seem a little phony even to say, hey, what's your favorite candy? And, show up the next week with that peace offering. Is there a way that we can be more genuine in our approach? I shouldn't say more genuine, because it'd be completely genuine.
Right.
Is there a way in which we might approach that strategically? I am going back to that word, because I think it is the right word. Is there a strategic approach to helping rebuild the foundation of a relationship that's turned toxic?
I think you've answered your own question earlier on, and that is to be curious enough to understand what's important to that other person and key in on that. And I had a business partner once who actually said out loud to me, and I missed it at first, but he said, Gary, you always talk as if things have already happened, and they haven't happened yet. It's called provisional speaking, and I'm terrible at this. And
you're exceptionally good at it, actually.
It's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
As Monk used to say, because I'm untethered by current reality, which helps me be, a visionary. But the problem is I'm untethered from current reality, and it's hard for me to actually get there. The point is, though, that when you're speaking provisionally, you have to make sure that you can bring people along. But toward that end, this person used to say, "Okay, Gary, just give me a percentage. Okay, stop saying this is already talking as if it's already happening. What do you think the percentage of the likelihood of this happening in 2 weeks, right?" And I started doing that with this person, and I'm so dense sometimes. It took him saying it more than once. He said it one time, I missed it. He said it again, and I think it was the third time he said it where it finally sunk in. Where every time I was in a meeting with that person, I would say, "You know what, Walt? It's a 75% chance that this is going to happen in the next month." Or, "You know what? It's probably only a 30% chance, but I'm going to keep talking about it until someone catches on and does it," right?
Okay.
And it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like magic in that relationship.
Yeah.
And he was continuously frustrated by me coming in and doing this, because he's a very pragmatic person. He's one of these people that if it's not happening currently or today, then it's not happening. It's not real. And so for me to, I was continuously frustrating it until I started using percentages. So the answer to your question, in my experience, is find out what's important to that person. How do they like to be communicated with?
And that's a big one in this day and age, because if your preference is text and their preference is a phone call, there's going to continue to be that disconnect.
I think texting and emailing is it's convenient, but it's the worst way to communicate. You don't know nuance. You can't tell what you call microequity, body language. You can't tell anything that's going on in a text or an email. And I'm in a situation right now today where I beg the person, pick up the phone and call me.
Yeah.
And I finally had to write an email and try to write what I was trying to communicate in an email. And I know I failed, because it's almost impossible to do the dialectic in this conversation that I would have done in a phone call and picked up on their nuances of, this relationship is so important to me, and I want this to continue, and I want to do this and this and this, but the answer on this thing is no. And there's no way to communicate this by email.
Right.
Sure, you could write a novel, but what's the odds that they're even going to get to the end?
Yeah.
Most people start an email, in my experience, and I know I do this, and they've decided whether the email is good or bad in the first sentence. So it doesn't matter what you say after that. So to me, the communication style is so important.
Yeah.
For me, I think picking up the phone and making a phone call is key. Other people, I've got children like this who just will, refuse to pick up the phone. I mean, they every once in a while I can get them on the phone and they enjoy it and it's great, but they just prefer text.
Yeah.
You know, why didn't you just text me? Well, I want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Well, Dad, that's not how it's done anymore. Okay. You know, and there are many people who can communicate fine by text, at least in their opinion.
Right. Well, but I think asking the question, what is your preferred means
Exactly.
of communication?
Yes.
And understanding that they actually mean it, hopefully, when they say it. And, you know, I've learned with my children, I can text something that will go ignored. But if I message on Snapchat, they see it instantly. And so, right, there are different styles of communication in our weird electronic world that are going to be much more successful than others, and it depends on the person.
Well, and I'll tell on myself here. I just got a new phone and I left my voicemail. You have to set up a voicemail. Everything else transfers. I forgot you have to set up your voicemail. So I went for a few days without even having my voicemail set up, which was heaven. But anyway, so what I did finally record a greeting, I literally said, voicemail is not the way to communicate with me. I'm much better by text. Yeah. So if you really need me, send a text. And by the way, that's another thing about with all the scam you get these days too. But even I prefer text over a voicemail because who's got time? Sorry, I don't have time to sit down and listen to a bunch of voicemails and respond to them at the end of the day. Just text me. So I prefer a text over a voicemail, but I prefer to have a conversation when I want to talk about something important.
Very good. All right, well, this may be a place to kind of wrap it up and bring it home. So toxic relationships, if you're embroiled in that, taking the time to begin to listen and maybe asking some poignant questions to get to know the heart of the person a little bit better, finding ways to act upon some of the information that you find out to maybe soften some of the rough exterior
edges.
Yeah, and if it's a brand new relationship and you're trying to get off on the right foot before things go south, it really boils down to the question and truly being curious about the person.
And listening before you respond. And this is something that Covey used to talk about, right? Diagnose before you prescribe or listen before you respond. And that is that is key, is what can you do? And I'm not good at this, but there are many people around me who will say, well, why don't you talk first? Right? That way you can get them to say, well, here's what's important to me. And then you can respond to that, right? And many relationships would go a lot better if we could do that.
Absolutely. All right, so as a reminder, we always love and value and appreciate your feedback. You can contact us very easily through the main website, which is curiositynotjudgment.com. Of course, depending on what platform you are presently using to hear or see us, you can comment in, that appropriate channel. And by all means, we welcome your thoughts. And if you've got subject matters that you want us to cover, please feel free to shoot that our way. If you agree or completely disagree with some of the stances that we've taken on topics, today or in the past, we value your opinion. And we certainly, I was saying it a little tongue-in-cheek at the opening of this, our road to enlightenment. But sincerely, I think this began as a genuine journey and a quest for both of us. How do we posture ourselves in a curious way to see the world differently? And how do we encourage others to join us in the quest for curiosity and how it might make improvement in our communities? And so we will stay curious about things that you want to send to us. So thank you, as always, for listening.
Take care.
Bye-bye.